Rev up your engine. Okay, the lady just bought this Highlander. Why did she buy a Highlander? Well, believe it or not, she's got a Mazda Tribute that has 380,000 miles on it. And it still runs, but as you can see, she lives in Connecticut. Everything rusts because of the salt on the road in the winter. Doesn't matter whether you drive it on the beach in the ocean, the salt's down and it destroys them. Now, of course, anybody who knows cars, that's no surprise because a Mazda Tribute is really a Ford Escape. That's when Mazda and Ford owned a bunch of Mazda, which they later sold off. We're calling the Ford Escapes Mazda Tributes, and everybody and their brother knows Fords rust away like no tomorrow because they don't coat them right, and it's no surprise. So her still runs good, I gotta say, but the body's all rotting away. And when they rot away, you know, let's face the facts, time to get a new vehicle. It's the beginning of the end. So she just bought this used. Now it's got 155 on it. As we look in the door, made in Japan. This thing was made in Japan, and this is why I tell people, get the regular seats because these are leather seats, and see, she got a nice cover. You got it because they crack. Now, the reason people buy these is under the hood. Variable valve timing, V6, 3.3 liter engine, very dependable Toyota engine, hooked up to an automatic transmission that can basically last forever. The only real downside of this Highlander is that it says four-wheel drive, but it's really all-wheel drive. I mean, what's in the name? So this thing only gets 19 miles a gallon combined, 16 in a city, and you can get about 22 on the highway. Now, when you buy a new one, you gotta pay more because they cost more to make them. Used, sometimes it doesn't make all that much difference in the price of the vehicle, but they weigh more. They have more wheels driving, they have more friction, so they're gonna get worse gas mileage. Interestingly enough, her old 380,000 miles Mazda, that's really a Ford Escape, she gets better gas mileage than that. And they both have V6s, and they both are four-wheel drive. So you don't get these things for gas mileage. You get them so they will last forever, which they often do. Now, the usual Toyota faded headlights, you can keep polishing them away, or you can do like I did with my wife's car and buy brand new ones. These things are $60 a pair. Now, the only downside of this is it's an older one. And as you can see, it's got a rubber timing belt. But she is in luck. Just a few miles ago, it had the timing belt changed. Now, a lot of people say, Toyotas, they hardly ever break. I'll just leave the old one on. But this is the 3.3 liter Toyota V6. One of the only engines they ever made that's an interference engine. Take my wife's 2001 ES 300 Lexus. It's a 3-liter engine. It's non-interference. If it breaks, I put another belt on. No harm done. If this baby breaks, pistons will hit the valves if you go more than 20 miles an hour, and then it's goodbye engine. It'll bend everything inside. So she was smart. She had that done, and she'll probably never have to think about it again. Now you can see she had struts put on, they wore out, and she had a power steering high side hose put on and valve cover gaskets. But she's lucky she has a guy who works on RVs who does honest work. So she spent $600 having all their work done. You know? Then I thought, oh, Connecticut, boy, she's gonna get ripped off. But no, she's on Social Security. She lives in a more of a ruralish area, and this guy works on RVs, he works on cars too, and he did a really fair deal for her. So not only does she get the right vehicle, she's got the right mechanic to work on the thing at the same time. Let's look under here, see if this thing's rusting out. And lo and behold, it is not. Because Toyota knows how to rust-proof their vehicles. And I haven't seen her Mazda, but being a rebadged Ford, I'm sure the Mazda, the fenders are all rotting away. She's shaking her head, yes. They would all be rotting away, but this isn't. So this is actually a very good vehicle for her to drive in Connecticut. It did have a leaking sunroof, which they're notorious for. My wife had a Toyota Cressida and it had a leaking sunroof, but rather than put this tape and plastic, what I did was I put silicone sealer bead on the inside, closed it. I hate sunroofs, they get old, they leak, so if you got a choice, don't get a sunroof because it's gonna leak, even on a Toyota. So let's start it up. It sounds like a Toyota engine with 150-something thousand miles. They can run basically forever. Now, theoretically, the valves need to be adjusted, right? But nobody ever does because unlike the Honda that has little screws, the Toyota, to adjust them, you would have to measure them all, write it on a piece of paper, then you got to take it all apart, take the shims out, measure the shims, and buy shims that will add or subtract so much to make the right adjustment. It's a gigantic pain in the rear end, right? But it's a Toyota. They last forever, okay? My Celica is a 94, 250,000 miles. The valves have never been touched. It still runs perfectly fine. Now, the AC still works fine, of course. It's a Toyota. She did have work done on the struts and stuff. But, like I said, it is not a rust bucket. Now, this is because at some point in time, somebody replaced this, right? Well, this is plastic. You're going to have to sand it all down or whatever and have it painted correctly and clear coated. Then it won't do that again. Or if you can find one that's already painted, there's just 2 bolts holding it out. You can pop it out, put another one on. Find a good one in the junkyard, you can just swap it out if you want it. Well, plug in a scan tool, fire up the old hotel here. That will turn everything off, turn the fan off. Have the key on. While it's reading stuff, you can see it's got 155,738 miles on it. Doing its thing, reading it. It already read the VIN number. Now we'll get ready to do a scan. It's thinking. And here we go. And, of course, we're talking dinosaur. It's got a CD player and, yes, a tape deck. For those of you who don't know what a tape deck is, they had these tapes that were magnetic tapes and people played music on them. But nobody really messes with tapes anymore. The problem is they degraded over time and they would wobble and get stuck, and then you'd grab them and the tape would hang out and you'd throw them out the window. So now we see there's nothing wrong, there's no code, so we'll go to the engine and we're gonna look at live data. So we'll go to engine and ECT. Now, the power outage the other day and the VCI Connect probably ran out of power, so I'm gonna have to recharge that. So instead, go to my other hotel because that doesn't have a VCI connector. It's just got a regular plug, which often works better. We'll go to engine and ECT. Now here's all the live data. So we'll start whipping through it. This basically goes to show that sometimes simpler is better. Rather than having a complex power supply box, this has a cord and a plug. Oh, here we go. We're gonna go through everything on this thing. Now we'll look at the fuel trim, okay? Short-term fuel trim, 1.5, 0.74, same thing on fuel trim 1 and 2. Now the long-term fuel trim is 7.7%. That means that it's running a little bit lean long-term, but an old car, you would rather have one that's running a little bit lean because this thing uses enough fuel as it is. If we fix this and they got the long-term fuel trim to get lower so that it was running less lean, you get worse gas mileage. A lean engine burns less fuel. Got electronic throttle, all that stuff's good. Remember, this is color coded. If it's a different color, it's got a problem. Injector millisecond is good. The evap system's good. Transmission data's good. No backup camera, so we gotta look behind us. And it's a Highlander, so guess what? It's high up in the air, so we're gonna have no problem going over the big old bump here. All right, over the bump we go. Now these things are pretty heavy vehicles. That's one of the reasons they don't get such great gas mileage. So I'm predicting, even though it's old, the ride over these horrible Rhode Island roads shouldn't be too bad, and I'm right. It isn't really bad at all. Now, the only thing that doesn't work anymore is their tire pressure monitoring system. I'm sure that the tire pressure monitoring sensors are all gone. The batteries have worn out when they're this old, but she's got a pressure gauge, so she doesn't care. Now, there's a V6 engine. Nobody's coming. We'll give it some gas. Sounds good, shifts good. Now, I could feel a slight bit of hesitation because, like I said, it's running a little bit lean. But, believe you me, she's not happy with the gas mileage as it stands now. You make it run richer, it's going to get worse gas mileage. And as we drive around, it's old, but it's still a very comfortable driving experience in this thing, you know? Corner's fine. She got a bunch of junk in the back, so it's rattling around. That's not the car, that's just all the junk she's got in the back seat. I don't hear any bearing noises. So, what do I think of her deal? Well, her Mazda Tribute, also known as Ford Escape, she likes that it gets better gas mileage, but when they rust away, they rust away. She made a smart move getting this because it's not rusting, it runs fine. They get bad gas mileage when they're all-wheel drive. And she didn't watch my video on that until she bought it. I saw her eyeing my wife's Matrix, especially when I told her it gets 37 miles a gallon on the highway. She said, that's my size. Well, you can't find them. There's hardly any good ones out there. Now, she told me she probably drives about 20,000 miles a year. I guarantee you this thing will hold up. Where her wallet hold up buying the gasoline part. That's the only downside of these things. So, if you're worried about that, get a two-wheel drive version. And if you're really worried about it, you can find an old two-wheel drive version with a 4-cylinder engine. They have a lot less power, but they also get better gas mileage. And of course, if you're going for a modern one, I mean, you can get a hybrid, and they do get quite a bit better gas mileage. They've only got a 4-cylinder engine and a hybrid battery pack. But just price one of those, and then you'll think, hey, maybe buy one of these for $7 grand isn't that bad of an idea after all. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.